The moment Lady Eleanor's gloved hand touched Lord Ashford's palm, the entire ballroom seemed to freeze, including the Duke of Northmere, who for 7 years had looked through her as if she were made of morning mist. Eleanor had perfected the art of invisibility. In a world of peacock-feathered debutantes and razor-tongued socialites, she'd learned to fold herself into corners, to smile without being seen, to exist without taking up space. The tongue whispered that she was plain, though her eyes held the warm amber of autumn honey. They said she was unremarkable, though her fingers had nursed half the estate's tenant children through scarlet fever last winter. She was, by every measure that mattered to London society, forgettable, which made it all the more confusing why she'd spent 7 years helplessly, privately, devastatingly in love with a man who'd never once asked her to dance. The Duke of Northmere, Edmund, to his intimate friends, "Your Grace," to everyone else, was carved from different marble than ordinary men, tall, aristocratic, with eyes like winter storms and a jaw that could have been sketched by Renaissance masters. He moved through ballrooms like a ship through fog, cutting a path, leaving wake, never looking back. In 7 seasons, across countless balls, dinner parties, and garden socials, he had spoken exactly 43 words to Eleanor. She'd counted everyone, hoarded them like a miser hoards gold. "Good evening. Pardon me. Lovely weather. How kind." Tonight, she'd worn her mother's pearls and her best silk gown, a soft rose that her sister insisted made her look almost pretty. She'd allowed herself one foolish hope, that perhaps this night, Edmund might finally see her. Really see her. Instead, she watched him waltz with the diamond-draped Lady Pemberton, then the laughing Miss Ashworth, then the exotic visiting Countess from Vienna. His hands settled on their waists with practiced ease. His smile, rare as summer snow, appeared twice. Eleanor felt each moment like a needle through fabric, small piercings that together created a pattern of pain. "He's a fool, you know." She startled, turning to find Lord Ashford, the Duke's younger brother, extending his hand. Where Edmund was ice and granite, Ashford was warmth and worn leather. His eyes crinkled at the corners. His cravat sat slightly askew. He looked like a man who'd actually lived rather than posed. "I beg your pardon?" Eleanor managed. "My brother. He's a fool." Ashford's smile was kind, but his eyes held something sharper, recognition, perhaps understanding. "Dance with me, Lady Eleanor. Let's give him something to notice." Her heart hammered against her corset. Across the ballroom, Edmund stood in conversation with Lord Halsbury, his profile sharp against the candlelight. He hadn't looked her direction once. "I don't think—" "That's the problem with all of us, isn't it?" Ashford interrupted gently. "We think too much. We calculate and measure and wait for perfect moments. Meanwhile, life happens in the imperfect ones." He wiggled his fingers invitingly. "One dance. What's the harm?" Everything, Eleanor thought, and nothing. What did she have left to lose? She placed her hand in his. The waltz swept them into its current, and Eleanor discovered that Lord Ashford danced like he talked, with an easy, unpretentious grace that made her feel lighter. He didn't hold her like she was fragile china. He held her like she was real. "You volunteer at the children's hospital," he said. Not a question. "How did you—" "I volunteer there, too. Tuesday afternoons." His eyes warmed. "You read to the little ones in the ward. I've seen you with them. You do all the character voices." Heat crept up her neck. She'd thought no one noticed her there. Either that her charity work was as invisible as everything else about her. "They enjoy the stories," she said quietly. "They adore you. Little Thomas with the burned hands hasn't spoken in 3 months. But last Tuesday, I heard him laugh at your dragon impression." Ashford spun her gently through a turn. "That's not nothing, Lady Eleanor." "That's not nothing at all." Tears pricked her eyes. When had anyone last told her she mattered? When had anyone seen the parts of herself she actually valued? Not the disappointing exterior, but the interior rooms where she kept her real treasures? "You're going to make me cry at a ball," she whispered. "That's terribly unfair." "Then let me make you smile." Instead, he launched into a wickedly accurate impression of Lady Weatherby's nasally gossip, and despite herself, Eleanor laughed, a real laugh, bright and unguarded. Across the ballroom, Edmund's head turned. For the first time in 7 years, the Duke of Northmere looked directly at Lady Eleanor Ashworth. Really looked. His eyes found her face, flushed with laughter. Her hand, comfortable in his brother's grip. The way she glowed, lit from within by something Edmund had never bothered to discover. His jaw tightened. The crystal flute in his hand trembled slightly. "There it is," Ashford murmured, but not unkindly. "Funny how we never value what we assume will always be there." The music ended. Ashford bowed, pressed a brotherly kiss to her gloved knuckles, and melted back into the crowd. Eleanor stood alone in the middle of the floor, suddenly aware of Edmund's gaze like sunlight through a magnifying glass. Focused, intense, burning. He crossed the ballroom in 6 strides. "Lady Eleanor." His voice was different than she remembered. Rough, uncertain. Would you grant me the next dance?" 7 years. 7 years of invisible devotion, and now, he noticed her. Because another man had? Something shifted in Eleanor's chest. Not the desperate, grateful leap she'd imagined in 1,000 daydreams. Something quieter, sadder, wiser. "Why?" she asked simply. Edmund blinked, clearly unaccustomed to being questioned. Pardon? "Why now, Your Grace? You've attended 50 balls where I was present. We've been introduced at least a dozen times. You've walked past me in Hyde Park, sat 4 chairs away at dinner parties, and once, quite memorably, stepped directly on my hem without apologizing." She wasn't angry, just tired. "So why now?" His mouth opened, closed. For perhaps the first time in his aristocratic life, the Duke of Northmere had no smooth answer. "I don't know," he admitted finally, and the honesty of it caught her off guard. "I looked up and saw you laughing with Ashford, and I wanted to know what he'd said. I wanted to be the reason for that smile." "You could have been," Eleanor said softly. "Any Tuesday afternoon at St. Margaret's Hospital. Any Sunday at the Ashworth estate, where your family visits quarterly and I'm always present. Any moment in 7 years where you chose to see me as a person rather than furniture." Something cracked in his perfect facade. "I know, God help me, I know." The opening strains of another waltz began. Around them, couples assembled. Eleanor felt the weight of watching eyes, heard the rustle of gossip beginning. She should walk away, should hold on to her dignity, her new understanding that she deserved, better than crumbs from a man who only wanted her when someone else did. But then she really looked at Edmund's face and saw not arrogance but anguish. Not entitlement but genuine remorse. He wasn't angry that his brother had danced with her. He was devastated that he'd wasted 7 years being blind. "One dance," she heard herself say. "But not because you're finally looking. Because I'm choosing to be kind, even when it's not deserved. That's who I am, Your Grace. Perhaps it's time you learned that." His hand trembled as it found her waist. They moved into the waltz, and Eleanor felt the difference. Immediately, Edmund didn't dance with easy warmth, like his brother. He danced like a man afraid of breaking something precious, like someone who'd just discovered he'd been holding treasure and mistaking it for dust. "I've been a fool," he whispered. "Yes," she agreed, "but fools can learn. The question is whether you will." The waltz spun on, and in the candlelit ballroom, with all of London society watching, something began that was neither simple nor easy. Not a fairy tale transformation, but something truer. The slow, difficult work of actually seeing another person, of choosing kindness over convention, of understanding that the most extraordinary things often wear the quietest faces. Ashford watched from the sidelines, a small smile playing at his lips. He'd never wanted Eleanor for himself. He already loved the brilliant Miss Carver, the physician's daughter whom society would never accept. But he'd recognized a kindred spirit in Eleanor. Someone who gave and gave and gave, asking nothing in return. Sometimes kindness needed a hand. Sometimes love needed a wake-up call. And sometimes the greatest act of humanity was simply choosing to see the invisible people, the quiet ones, the selfless ones, the ones who made the world gentler simply by existing in it. The music swelled toward its final crescendo, and Eleanor met Edmund's eyes. She saw 7 years of regret there, but also possibility, also hope. She smiled, not for him, but for herself. For the woman who'd learned she was worth seeing, whether anyone looked or not. That, she thought, was perhaps the most important waltz of all.